Every teacher and student of the English language must listen to this audiobook for its profound educational benefits. Scientific research on language acquisition and educational psychology shows that listening to well-crafted audiobooks enhances comprehension, vocabulary, and critical thinking skills. By engaging multiple senses, hearing and, in some cases, reading along, students reinforce their understanding, improving retention and recall. Listening activates different regions of the brain, enhancing language processing abilities. Research from the Journal of Educational Psychology suggests that audiobooks help students internalize grammar and sentence structure naturally, as they hear the language used in context. Moreover, it supports learning for auditory learners, making the material accessible to a wider range of students, including those with learning differences like dyslexia. For teachers, audiobooks serve as a powerful tool to model correct pronunciation, intonation, and fluency, while also creating a dynamic learning environment. They allow students to engage with diverse literary styles, from the humor in Father's Help to the poetic depth in Sea Fever. By listening to these stories and poems, students not only improve their English skills, but also foster a deeper connection to literature and the world around them. This audiobook is a must-have for both educators and learners, making English learning more immersive, effective, and enjoyable.
Hey everyone, and welcome to another Deep Dive. This time we are looking at Father's Help.
Father's Help.
It's by R.K. Narayan.
R.K. Narayan.
And it's from his collection of short stories, Malgodi Days.
Malgodi Days.
Yeah. We all know that feeling, right? Sunday evening rolls around.
Yeah.
And that dread of Monday morning.
Oh, yeah.
And school.
Absolutely.
That's where we find our main character.
Okay.
Young Swaminathan.
Swaminathan.
And he is dreading going back to school after the weekend.
I can relate.
And especially because he has to face this really strict teacher,
Oh.
Mr. Samuel.
Mr. Samuel. Yeah.
So Narayan really captures that childhood anxiety that you get at the end of the weekend when you know you've got to go back to school.
The weekend is fleeting.
Yeah.
That joy.
Fleeting joy.
And then all of a sudden, homework and all the classroom pressures loom large.
So Swaminathan is really dreading Mr. Samuel.
Okay, yeah.
He's not the most popular guy.
So this really sets the stage for a classic power dynamic.
Yeah.
You have the parent-child dynamic, but then you also have the student-teacher dynamic.
Absolutely.
And the tension that can exist there.
So, I mean, anyone who has felt intimidated by an authority figure will totally get where Swaminathan is coming from.
Okay.
So, like any normal kid, he tries to get out of going to school.
Of course.
So first, he tries the "Mom, I have a headache."
Oh, the classic.
Routine.
Yeah.
And at first, his mom, she falls for it.
Yeah, I mean, many mothers would.
Yeah.
You know?
But Dad's having none of it.
Dad's not buying it?
No.
Not for a second.
He sees right through it and insists that he goes to school.
Go to school.
Even if it means being late.
Okay.
And it's really funny because Swaminathan is trying to convince his dad that being late for Mr. Samuel's class is like a terrible, awful fate.
Yeah, a fate worse than death.
Yeah. He even claims that the headmaster is scared of Samuel.
Wow.
Narayan's humor in this is spot on.
Yeah.
You know, he really gets that exaggerated sense of fear that kids have.
Right.
But it's funny, but it's also relatable.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
I mean, we've all been there.
We've all been there.
At some point in our lives.
We've all had those figures in our childhood that seemed so powerful and so big and scary.
Larger than life.
Yeah.
Okay.
So then Narayan throws in this twist.
Okay.
Instead of, you know, brushing off Swaminathan's fears or, you know, disciplining him, he decides to write a letter of complaint.
What?
To the headmaster.
About the teacher.
About Mr. Samuel.
Wow. This is interesting.
It's a bit unexpected.
Yeah, it really subverts our expectations.
Yeah.
I would have expected the father to, I don't know, discipline Swaminathan or just brush it off completely.
Yeah.
But this is a dramatic step.
So suddenly Swaminathan isn't just facing being late to class.
Yeah.
He's got this letter.
Right.
This official complaint.
Wow. Talk about pressure.
That he has to deliver.
So he's been given the power then.
Yeah.
To potentially get his teacher in trouble.
And that comes with a lot of guilt.
Right.
So as he's walking to school with this letter, he starts to doubt himself. You know, was he being truthful about Samuel, or was he just exaggerating because he was scared?
Of course.
And didn't want to go to school?
So this is a pivotal moment in the story.
Yeah.
This is where Swaminathan's perception starts to shift a little bit.
Yeah.
He starts to think back to when Samuel was actually kind to him.
Yeah.
And supportive. Moments that contradict what he told his father.
It's like writing the letter has made him see Samuel in a different light.
More nuanced.
Yeah, and he's starting to realize people aren't just good or bad, you know?
Yeah.
They're complicated.
Complex.
Yeah.
With layers.
We've got lots of layers.
Yeah.
And this is really interesting because it really shows the complexity of how kids see things, you know?
Yeah.
Their feelings are so strong. Yes.
That it's hard for them to hold two opposite views of the same person at the same time.
It's hard for them to grasp that, you know, people can be good and bad.
Yeah.
You know?
But we see Swaminathan starting to get that.
He's maturing a little bit. So now he has this dilemma. Does he deliver the letter and get Samuel in trouble? Or does he try and get out of this mess that he's created?
So what does he do?
Well, he decides to stall.
He stalls.
Yeah. He's hoping that maybe Samuel will do something awful in class that will justify the letter.
So he's hoping for the worst case scenario.
Yeah, he's hoping for something terrible to happen so that he doesn't feel so bad about the letter.
A mix of guilt and self-preservation going on there.
Absolutely. So he gets to class and something totally unexpected happens.
Okay.
Samuel is really understanding about him being late and not having his homework.
It's like he's defying Swaminathan's expectations.
Yeah. I mean, he's expecting to be scolded.
Right.
But instead, Samuel's really lenient.
Wow. So ironic.
Yeah, and the irony is increased by the fact that Samuel actually praises Swaminathan's father
my goodness.
for sending him to school.
Narayan really flips the script here.
Yeah.
Leaving us. Yeah. And Swaminathan completely caught off guard.
Oh, and Swaminathan feels even worse.
Oh, no.
Now.
Yeah.
Because he's thinking, oh, you poor man.
Right.
You have no idea.
You have no idea.
What my father's done to you.
Right. Dramatic irony at play here.
It's heartbreaking, but also hilarious.
The audience knows what's in the letter.
Yeah.
But poor Samuel is totally unaware.
Yeah.
Oblivious.
So at the end of the day, Swaminathan tries to give the letter to the headmaster. But the headmaster's on leave.
Of course.
Of course he is.
It's like fate is intervening here.
I know.
Keeping that letter from reaching its destination.
So he goes home and his father knows immediately that something's up. And he says, I knew you wouldn't deliver it.
Oh.
And he takes the letter and rips it up.
Wow. What a powerful image.
It's like he's not just destroying the letter.
Right.
But he's destroying Swaminathan's hope of escaping the consequences of his actions.
The consequences of lying.
Yeah.
Of trying to get out of things.
And then he says, don't ever come to me for help.
Don't ever come to me for help.
If Samuel scolds you again.
Wow.
You deserve your Samuel.
That statement is so loaded.
Yeah.
So much meaning packed in there.
I mean, what do you make of that?
I don't know. It's tough.
Yeah.
Was he actually trying to help Swaminathan?
Yeah.
Or was he teaching him a lesson?
Yeah.
About honesty.
Uh-huh.
And responsibility.
And that's what's so great about Narayan's writing.
Uh-huh.
You know, he doesn't give you the answers. No. He leaves it up to you to figure out what the characters are thinking and what their motivations are. Yeah. It's a story that really makes you think.
Right.
So, what are your first impressions of the story so far?
I mean, it's amazing how Narayan can take something like childhood fear
and
really explore these deeper themes.
Yeah.
Like how we see the world.
Right.
And how children and adults interact with each other.
Yeah.
And he doesn't shy away from the messy reality of those relationships.
Absolutely.
And he does it all with this great sense of humor.
Yeah, it's insightful, but it's also really funny.
Yeah.
It's entertaining.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah. You know, it's really interesting how the story plays with our expectations.
Yeah.
In the beginning, we feel bad for Swaminathan.
Yeah.
Because he's so scared of Samuel.
Yeah.
You know, we think he's this harsh, tyrannical guy.
Yeah. Especially when he tells his dad the headmaster's scared of him too.
Right. We think, oh, he must be awful.
Yeah. We're waiting for this ogre to appear.
Right. And then as the story goes on, we start to see
a different side to him.
Yeah. We see moments of kindness and understanding.
Right.
And even humor.
It's brilliant.
Yeah.
How Naran does this. Yeah. He slowly reveals Samuel's true nature.
It makes us question our initial assumptions.
Yeah.
About not just Samuel, but about how we see people in general.
It makes you think, how often are we wrong when we judge someone?
It's a really important message.
Yeah, especially now when it's so easy to judge people based on, you know, a little bit of information or what we see online.
Right. So Father's Help is kind of a warning to look beneath the surface.
Don't judge a book by its cover.
And to consider different perspectives and to remember that our first impressions might be wrong.
This is an important lesson.
Yeah.
For everyone.
For everyone. Yeah. Kids and adults.
And it's amazing how Narayan weaves this message into the story.
Yeah, he doesn't preach.
No.
He just shows us the situation.
Right.
And lets the reader decide for themselves.
Which brings us to the father's actions at the end.
Okay.
Why did he rip up the letter?
It's an intriguing moment. I mean, maybe he was protecting his son.
Yeah. Maybe he realized that Swaminathan was exaggerating.
Maybe he knew he was scared and just didn't want to go to school.
So he was protecting him from the consequences.
From the headmaster.
Yeah, exactly.
From the teacher.
He was keeping it within the family.
Right. Dealing with it.
And he says, you deserve your Samuel.
Right.
What do you think he meant by that?
That could be a different interpretation. Maybe he was challenging Swaminathan to face his fears.
Right.
You know, you created this situation. Yeah. Now deal with it.
So it's a tough love approach.
Tough love.
But maybe it was the best thing for him.
It could help him become more resilient.
Yeah. And learn to deal with difficult people.
Yeah. And take responsibility for his actions.
So it makes you think about help. Did he actually help Swaminathan?
Yeah.
By doing that?
By intervening.
Yeah. Or would it have been better to let him deliver the letter?
Right.
Yeah. Or face the music.
Right.
So it's a question that Narayan leaves us with.
Right.
He doesn't give us any easy answers. No. It makes us think about parent-child relationships and the consequences of our actions.
Yeah.
It's amazing how he can deal with these really complicated themes and still make it funny.
Right. He finds humor in these difficult situations.
It makes it so relatable and engaging.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We laugh with Swaminathan.
But we also feel sorry for him.
It reminds us that life is full of ups and downs, highs and lows, and that humor can help us get through it all.
It can help us cope.
Yeah.
Yeah. See things in a different way.
It can help us find a way forward.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So Father's Help is a coming-of-age story about a young boy dealing with fear and how he sees the world.
And how he sees the adults in his life.
And it's also a funny look at how parents and children interact with each other.
Dynamics.
And sometimes the ways that they help aren't always the best ways.
Right. Unintended consequences.
So it makes you think about what it means to help someone.
It's a story that will stay with you long after you've finished reading it.
It makes you think about your own experiences.
In your relationship.
And how we connect with other people.
It's timeless.
Yeah.
It speaks to
everyone.
And it really shows Narayan's talent for capturing the little details of human experience.
With wit and compassion and insight.
Absolutely. It's amazing how much Narayan packs into this story.
It is.
And one of the things that stands out is the irony. You know?
Yeah.
How he uses irony to kind of turn things upside down.
It makes you question everything.
Like in the beginning.
Yeah.
We think Samuel's this terrifying guy.
Right. Real monster.
And we see him through Swaminathan's eyes.
Right.
So of course it's scary.
Yeah.
Because Swaminathan's a kid.
Of course.
And he's scared of going to school.
Yeah.
But then Narayan flips everything on its head.
Yeah.
Because Samuel turns out to be understanding.
Yeah.
And even kind.
Yeah.
And it makes us rethink everything we thought we knew about him.
Like maybe we shouldn't judge people.
Yeah.
Based on first impressions or limited information.
Right. We have to keep an open mind.
Yeah.
And challenge our own biases.
It shows how good a writer Narayan is.
Yeah.
That he can change our minds like that.
Yeah.
So subtly.
And the title, Father's Help.
Father's Help.
Is ironic too.
Right.
Did he really help Swaminathan?
Good question.
I mean, maybe he was just trying to protect him.
Right. Shielding him from the consequences of his lie.
But he also might have stopped him from learning a lesson.
Right.
About honesty.
About taking responsibility for his actions.
And that's what makes it so interesting. We're like wondering.
Thinking about what it means to help.
We are super stoked to dive into it.
Yeah.
It's Ralph Waldo Emerson's poem, Fable. It's this really neat little conversation between a mountain and a squirrel.
I love it.
And it's deceptively simple, but man, it packs a philosophical punch.
Oh, for sure.
Now, I think a lot of our listeners probably already know.
Yeah.
Emerson was like a major figure back in the 19th century.
Absolutely. Yeah.
All about individuality and nature.
Huge in the transcendentalist movement.
Exactly. But let's see what this fable has to say to us today.
I'm ready.
In the 21st century.
Let's go.
All right. So I'm just going to dive right in.
Okay.
The poem kicks off with this mountain. And he is basically bragging about his size.
Classic mountain move.
Right. Like, he even calls the squirrel a little prig.
Oh, he went there.
Oh, yeah. So, like, immediately we've got this tension, this idea that bigger is automatically better.
Right, right.
So, I got to ask, is Emerson on the mountainside here?
That's a great question. I don't think so. Not necessarily.
Okay.
I think he's using the mountain to show us a perspective that we probably encounter all the time, to be honest.
Oh, yeah.
Which is, like, that success or value is all about being the biggest, the loudest, the most, whatever.
Makes you think, huh?
It really does.
Well, good thing the squirrel's not having any of that.
Right.
It hits back with this line, "You are doubtless very big, but all sorts of things and weather must be taken in together."
Woo! Mic drop.
I know, right? But it's true, though, isn't it? Like, think about a year.
Yeah.
It's not all sunshine and rainbows.
No, for sure.
You need the rain, the wind, the snow.
Absolutely.
Even the, like, gloomy, overcast days sometimes, right?
Exactly. That's what the squirrel's getting at, I think. It's about the need for diversity. Not just out in nature, but in, like, how we think and approach problems.
Interesting.
To create a sphere, a whole world, you need all sorts of things, all sorts of perspectives. Even the small and, seemingly insignificant.
I'm getting, like, major team vibes here.
Oh, tell me about it.
Like those teams where everybody's a superstar, but they can't actually get anything done.
Because everyone's trying to be the mountain.
Right. But let's get back to the poem.
Okay, yeah.
The squirrel isn't done yet. It goes on to say, "If I'm not so large as you, you are not so small as I, and not half so spry."
It's like so sassy and clever.
It's brilliant. It's turning that insult right back around.
I love that.
And you know what? It really reminds us that comparing ourselves based on just one thing is always going to be messed up.
Okay, yeah.
The mountain can't crack a nut.
And the squirrel probably can't cause an avalanche.
Exactly. Each one has its own strengths, right?
Right.
I think Emerson's really trying to get us to see the unique talents we each bring to the table.
I like that.
Yeah.
And, like, he makes that point so clear in the last few lines. Talents differ. All is well and wisely put. If I cannot carry forests on my back, neither can you crack a nut.
It's beautiful, isn't it?
It is. It's like he's saying, look, stop comparing. Everyone has their role to play, and it all works out in the end.
Yeah, it's about finding unity in diversity.
Yes. Think about your own life, your family, your workplace, your community. There are people who are amazing at things you struggle with.
Oh, for sure.
And vice versa. But that's not a weakness, it's a strength.
Wow.
When we recognize and value those different talents, we create a more balanced and functional world.
Like an ecosystem, you know.
Exactly.
Everything needs to work together.
Everything has its place.
So this little fable with the mountain and the squirrel, it's really reminding us to look beyond the obvious, appreciate the contributions of everyone, and even embrace those who are different from us.
That's the key.
It's a powerful message.
Really?
Even if it is coming from, a talking squirrel.
Haha, that's Emerson for you.
That's Emerson for you.
Okay.
So where do we go from here?
Well, I think the real challenge for you listening is how can you apply this idea of talents differ in your own life? Who are you underestimating? Who are you overlooking? Where could a different perspective actually make things better?
That's something to think about.
It is. Those are Emerson's questions for you to ponder.
And on that note, we'll leave you to do just that. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive.
It's been a pleasure.
We'll catch you next time. Welcome back, everyone.
See you then.
Ready for another deep dive.
Always.
Today, we're looking at Nayantara Sehgal's memoir, Prison and Chocolate Cake. But we're zeroing in on one specific part.
Okay.
Her account of Gandhi's assassination and what happened right after.
I see.
Usually with history, it's all about the facts and dates.
Yeah.
But with Sehgal, she's a really well-known Indian author, by the way.
Oh, right.
Her book gives us this really personal and emotional view of how India basically just shattered.
It must have been a huge shock to the system.
Totally. Yeah. And she describes this weird silence that just fell over Delhi when the news got out.
Like the city was in mourning already.
Exactly, like time stopped or something.
Wow.
And she talks about just being at home, having tea, normal stuff.
Yeah.
And then the phone rings and everything changes.
I can't imagine.
This one line really got me, though. She describes the news spreading like a flame fanned by wind.
That is a powerful image.
Right. You can just feel how fast and intense it all was.
Makes you feel like you're right there.
Then she takes us to Birla House, where Gandhi was staying.
Okay.
And there's this stunned crowd all gathered there. She says their faces look like a brown blur.
Just staring up?
Yeah, at the windows. Total silence at first.
Heavy.
But then, as it all sinks in, it just erupts.
Wow.
I mean, think about it.
Yeah.
Gandhi wasn't just a leader.
Right.
He was Bapu.
Mm-hmm.
Like a father to the whole nation.
Yeah.
Sehgal even says people felt lost like orphans.
He really had that level of influence, huh?
It's incredible when you think about it. Leading a movement against an empire, mostly peacefully.
It takes a lot of trust from people to pull that off.
Absolutely. Then we get to the funeral procession.
Okay.
No cars. Everyone walks. This huge mass of people all mourning together.
Powerful.
I know, right? It's their last journey together.
Walking alongside him.
And Sehgal makes it feel so real. Thousands wanting to touch his feet one last time.
That's a strong image.
His body's on this truck, covered in flowers. It's not just a procession,
It's more like a pilgrimage.
Exactly. But there's also this incredible unity in it all.
I can see that.
Makes you think about Gandhi's whole philosophy,
How so?
The slowness, everyone working together, rejecting that rush and hurry we all feel.
Oh, interesting. Like it reflects his ideas about nonviolence.
Exactly. Makes you wonder how much of it was intentional.
You mean, did they plan to walk specifically to symbolize all that?
Yeah, was it a choice? Or just how things were done back then?
It's hard to say, for sure. I mean, back then, walking was just a life.
Right.
So on one level, the procession reflects that, but by walking with his body,
they made it mean something more.
They elevated it.
Yeah. And it became a really powerful statement.
Showing their commitment to his ideals.
Totally. It's like taking that first step, literally and symbolically.
Towards the India he dreamed of.
And then she describes another powerful moment, putting his ashes in the Ganges.
Oh, right.
It's like a turning point in the book as she's on the train back to Delhi.
It starts to hit her.
Yeah, how huge his absence really is.
And the shock wears off.
Exactly. And that's when we see Sehgal really struggling with it all.
Her personal experience.
Yeah, this feeling of being lost, like a magic circle vanished.
Interesting.
And what's really fascinating is that she admits she wasn't a diehard follower of Gandhi.
Oh, okay.
She hadn't gone to prison or done any of those things.
Right.
But still, his death left this huge hole.
It makes you wonder.
Right. How can someone who wasn't right there in the thick of it feel such a deep loss?
It speaks to how far his influence reached.
Beyond just the political stuff.
Right. Gandhi went beyond just leading a movement. He touched every part of India.
It wasn't even about agreeing with all his policies, you know.
It was more about
the values, the hope, the guidance he gave a nation that was trying to find its way.
That makes sense.
It's interesting how Sehgal deals with this personal loss, but also thinks about what Gandhi's death means for all of India.
I see what you mean. It really shows how important Gandhi was.
Right. Not just some politician.
Exactly. It was deeper. He stood for, well, a whole way of life.
That went beyond just politics.
And that's why even those not directly in the movement felt it.
Yeah, like a personal blow.
It's striking. Sehgal actually questions whether she has the right to grieve, you know? She says, I hadn't been to prison, made those sacrifices others had, but that gets to the core of it.
That Gandhi's impact wasn't limited to just the activists.
Right. Everyday people, their values, their hopes were shaped by him.
Almost like he became like the nation's conscience.
And when he's gone,
everyone's left wondering what comes next.
Exactly. Sehgal describes this moment on the train back to Delhi.
Okay.
She's asking herself, did Bapu live and die for nothing?
Oof. Heavy question.
A lot of Indians must have felt that.
And her answer is so powerful.
What's that?
That Gandhi's legacy isn't about just being sad.
It's about
taking his message and running with it.
That's the heart of it all, really, not just the past.
It's how it connects to us now.
And what we do going forward.
So how did his assassination really change India?
Big question.
Did it become the nonviolent nation he wanted?
It's complicated. Historians still debate how much Gandhi truly shaped things.
Right.
I mean, you could argue his death could have caused total chaos.
Yeah, losing that uniting figure. Disaster waiting to happen.
But then there's the undeniable influence of his teachings.
Millions were inspired by him.
Peace, justice, that was his message.
So his death, in a way, showed everyone what they could lose.
Like a wake-up call.
To protect what he built.
And it wasn't easy for India after independence.
Oh, I bet.
Setbacks, conflicts, times when Gandhi's ideals felt far away.
But his legacy kept coming up.
In the conversations people had.
Those peaceful protests against unfair laws, even now, fighting poverty and injustice.
It's fascinating how Sehgal herself represents that continuation.
She wasn't an activist or anything.
But she used her writing to speak out for what she believed in.
It's a good reminder that keeping Gandhi's ideas alive doesn't mean we all have to lead revolutions.
Sometimes it's about living by those values, using your voice, whatever that is, to make a difference.
Right. And that brings us back to everyone listening.
Yeah.
Think about it. Does anyone today have that same moral weight Gandhi had?
Who would we feel that loss for, even if we didn't know them personally?
Tough question these days.
Things are so different now. Lots of voices, different views.
Not like everyone looked up to the same person anymore?
True. But maybe there are people out there doing their thing.
Activists, artists, scientists, you name it.
Whose work just clicks with people.
Across different backgrounds and beliefs.
People who push us to be better, aim higher.
Like what about Nelson Mandela?
Yeah. That fight against apartheid, that message of forgiveness, still inspires so many.
Or Martin Luther King Jr.
His dream of a world where who you are inside matters more than what you look like. Still so powerful.
And their actions and ideas had an impact way beyond their own lifetime.
It's like Gandhi.
His nonviolent resistance is still a model for people fighting for justice.
It shows that ideas can live on, you know?
Long after the person's gone.
Which means it's up to all of us to keep those ideas going.
Because, as Sehgal says, it's not just about missing a leader.
It's about facing that challenge. What do we do now?
That's the amazing thing about her book.
It's more than just history.
It's a call to action. Figure out what matters to you.
Who inspires you?
Think about how you can help build that world Gandhi wanted.
So to wrap things up, Sehgal talked about a magic circle disappearing.
Those values, those people, the things that give your life meaning.
How do we keep them alive?
Even when they're gone. How do we live like they did?
It's like Sehgal's own journey after Gandhi died.
Yeah.
It's like a reflection of what all of India was going through.
This massive feeling of grief, but then also
that big question mark.
What now? How do you even begin to move on when someone like that is gone?
And she's honest about it, you know? It's not like she thought Gandhi's India was perfect.
Right. There were still so many problems.
Social issues, political divides, figuring out how to rebuild a whole nation.
It wasn't going to be easy.
And when she talks about the magic circle disappearing...
it hits even harder.
Because it makes you realize that Gandhi's ideals, they don't depend on just one person.
We all have to work for them. It's a group effort.
To make a better world. Which brings us to you, listening.
Think about it. Are there people like that today?
Whose absence would leave us feeling that lost?
Even if we didn't know them personally?
It's hard to say, right? The world's so different.
We get information from everywhere. So many different influences.
Not like everyone follows the same leader or believes the same things anymore.
True. But maybe, just maybe.
There are those people out there making a difference.
In all kinds of fields.
Whose work really speaks to something deep inside us.
And cuts across all those differences.
People who make us want to be better versions of ourselves.
Like Nelson Mandela.
His fight against apartheid. And his focus on forgiveness. Bringing people together. That still resonates today.
And Martin Luther King Jr.
His dream of a world where it's about who you are, not what you look like. So important.
Their ideas, their actions, they went way beyond their own lifetimes.
Just like Gandhi.
His nonviolent approach. Still inspiring people fighting for justice all over the world.
Proof that ideas can outlive anyone.
And we're the ones who have to carry the torch now.
Because Segal reminds us, it's not enough to just mourn a leader's loss.
We have to step up.
Ask ourselves, what can we do now? And that's what's so great about diving into this book.
It's not just history. It makes you think.
About what you believe in, who inspires you.
And how you can help create that world Gandhi imagined.
So before we go, remember that magic circle Segal talked about?
The things that give your life meaning.
What are those things for you? And how do you keep them alive?
Even after the people are gone, how do we live their values?
Keep searching, keep asking those questions. Keep that fire burning.
Okay, so get ready for something a little different. You know, we always try to bring you fascinating deep dives on this show. But today, we're taking a look at oak trees.
But not your typical oak tree discussion, I'm guessing.
Yeah, exactly. We're going deep with a poem called My Own True Family by Ted Hughes.
Okay, Ted Hughes, I know him. Intense, a little dark, right? Nature was a big theme in his work.
Definitely. And in this poem, he really takes this idea of human connection to nature, well, to kind of a whole other level. It gets a little spooky even.
Spooky how? You got me curious.
Well, right from the start, the poem throws you into this scene. The kid, alone, wandering through an oak wood looking for a stag.
I feel like I'm already in like a fairy tale or a myth.
Oh, totally. You've got that classic, almost archetypal image, right? But then he meets this old woman, and she just comes out and says, I know your secret. Like, bam.
Ooh, okay. Yeah, I see where that spooky vibe is coming in.
Right. It's so sudden. So, okay, we've got this oak wood, right?
Yeah.
Which is key.
Oh, yeah. Oak trees are packed with symbolism. I mean, especially historically. Think about those ancient druids, right? They used to worship in oak groves.
Strength, wisdom, long life. They're kind of like the ultimate symbol of the power of nature.
Exactly. So Hughes, he's not just picking a random tree here. He wants us to feel that power.
Totally. And then it takes an even darker turn. So the old woman, she opens this bag she's carrying.
Oh, no. What's in the bag?
Well, inside, it's not what you'd expect. The kid, now he's tied to a stake. And he's surrounded by this, well, Hughes calls them the oak tree tribe.
Oh, wow. Okay, now I'm really picturing something out of a horror movie.
Yeah, and at the beginning, it's like a kid out on an adventure, right? Like he's in charge exploring the woods. But now it's like nature is calling the shots.
Makes you think, right? Like we tend to think we're in control of nature, but this flips that on its head.
Yeah, and the oak tree tribe, they don't hold back. They accuse humans of chopping them down, tearing them up, basically destroying their world. It's a pretty harsh accusation.
It's direct, for sure, but it's important. Hughes isn't afraid to hit us with the hard truth about deforestation. It's such a big issue. And sometimes it's easy to forget how interconnected everything is.
Oh, yeah. You lose the trees, you lose so much more.
Exactly. It's the whole ecosystem. Biodiversity, climate change, even our own clean air and water. We really need to think about those consequences.
Absolutely. And in the poem, the Oak Tree Tribe, they have a pretty clear demand. They want a promise.
To stop cutting them down.
Well, more specifically, 2 trees planted for every one cut down. Like a kind of moral contract,
I love that. It's funny. This idea of reciprocity with nature, it's central to so many indigenous cultures. And now it's becoming more and more important in modern environmental movements.
It's like this universal understanding that we can't just take from nature without giving back.
Right. We have to find that balance.
Definitely. And, the way Hughes writes this, even after the kid escapes, he can't go back to seeing the world the same way. His heart had been changed literally into a tree.
It's almost like a metaphor for how nature can change us deep down. Like we might go back to our everyday lives, but that experience stays with us, changes how we see things.
Yeah, it's like he can't separate himself from nature anymore.
That's powerful. And it ties into something that I think is really fascinating, this field of ecopsychology. It looks at how connected our mental and emotional well-being is to being in nature.
It's like we need that connection to thrive.
Exactly. So maybe Hughes, he was onto something back then. It's not just about planting trees. It's about understanding our place in the natural world.
Recognizing how much we depend on it, how much we're a part of it.
Right.
So you've heard the message. It's pretty powerful stuff. I'm curious, how will you honor that promise to the trees? How can we work together to make sure everyone gets to experience that wonder, that awe of being in a place like that ancient oak wood? Think about it.
It's a good question.
Welcome back, everyone. Today, we're taking a deep dive into a story you might not know by a pretty famous author.
Oh, yeah.
Lucy Maud Montgomery.
Of course.
Anne of Green Gables.
Yes.
Yes.
But this one...
Now, this I'm not familiar with.
It's called Our Runaway Kite. And it takes us on a completely different journey than Anne.
Okay, color me intrigued. Where are we headed?
So imagine this. 2 siblings, Claude and Philippa, living with their dad, who's a lighthouse keeper, on a teeny tiny island called Big Half Moon Island.
Isolated much.
Totally. Now, their lives change in a way they never expect when a kite they fix up.
Kids in their kites.
Right. But this kite is patched with a really old letter. And get this, it leads them to family they never even knew existed.
Oh, wow. Family secrets and a runaway kite? What a combo.
I know, right? And what Montgomery does so well is she uses this, really simple story to get us thinking about family, the need to connect with others, and how even the smallest things we do can have a huge ripple effect. So it's about way more than just finding some long-lost relatives.
Exactly. What really struck me when I first read this was this feeling of longing that Montgomery creates right from the start.
Yeah, immediately.
Yes. The kids are, craving connection. They want playmates. They want to experience the world beyond this tiny island.
It's like they're both drawn to and scared of connection at the same time.
Absolutely. We even see them fighting with kids from the mainland sometimes.
Really?
Yeah, which makes their isolation even more heartbreaking. It's like they want to connect, but they're also unsure how to.
Oh, that's sad.
I know, right? And then there's this whole mystery surrounding their dad's past, which just adds another layer to the story.
Oh, how so?
Well, he doesn't have any relatives. And when the kids ask him about it, all he says is that it's all his fault.
Talk about cryptic. No wonder the kids are bewildered.
Right. And I think Montgomery is doing this on purpose,
Yeah.
Like she's giving us pieces of a puzzle.
Oh, I see, yeah.
She wants us to figure out what happened in the father's past and how it ties into the children's longing for family.
I like that, the puzzle. It definitely keeps you reading, that's for sure.
Oh, absolutely.
Right.
And then we get to the heart of the story, which Montgomery calls the Summer of Kites.
Okay, this sounds fun.
Oh, it is. The kids become obsessed with kite flying, spending hours making these incredible creations and pretending to be, get this, shipwrecked mariners signaling for help.
I love that. What a great image. It's like they're playing out their own isolation, right? Like subconsciously they're wishing for someone to rescue them from this lonely island.
Oh, you're so right. I didn't even think of it that way, but it totally makes sense. Montgomery was really good at layering in those kinds of symbolic details.
Definitely. So tell me more about these kites. Are they just regular kites, or is there something special about them?
Well, they make a bunch of different kites.
Sure.
But there's one that's extra special. It's red with gold stars and, get this, their names on it. It becomes this symbol of their bond, their shared childhood on this isolated island.
I like that.
Me too. And it's this very special kite that sets everything in motion. One day, Philippa, she accidentally tears a hole in it. Right? And they're in a rush to fix it before the wind dies down, so they grab the first thing they can find.
I can see it coming.
What?
The old letter. They used the old letter, didn't they?
You got it. An old letter just sitting on the bookcase.
Wow, what are the chances?
I know. It seems so insignificant at the time, but this one little act, patching a kite with a letter, ends up changing everything.
That's crazy. Talk about ripple effects.
Right. So they fix the kite, send it soaring, but then
I sing trouble.
String snaps.
Oh, no.
And their beloved kite drifts away towards the mainland.
Leaving Claude with nothing but a broken string. Oh, I bet he was devastated.
And Montgomery, she's so clever here. She leaves us hanging at this point, wondering what happened to the kite, just like the children.
Ugh, talk about a cliffhanger. Makes you want to keep reading to find out what happens next.
Exactly. And it really makes you think, doesn't it? This one simple event, the kite flying away, it becomes this huge turning point in the story, a catalyst for something way bigger than the children could have ever imagined.
Wow, can't wait to hear what happens next. And then what? What happens to the kite?
Well, Montgomery doesn't tell us right away.
Oh, no, she's going to make us wait.
She does. A whole month goes by.
A whole month.
Yep, with no news of the kite. And then one day, a letter arrives for their dad.
Okay, I'm on the edge of my seat here.
And it's like this huge turning point in the story. Because when the father reads this letter...
What happened?
He breaks down. Like, completely falls apart.
Whoa, seriously. He's usually so stoic, right?
Exactly. So it's obvious this isn't just any ordinary letter. This thing is like a key to his past. Some deep, unresolved pain he's been carrying around for years.
Oh, that's heavy. Montgomery's so good at using these little moments to, like, deepen the mystery, you know? She gives us just a glimpse of what's going on inside the father's head. And it makes us even more desperate to know what's in that letter.
Totally. It's like all the questions we've had about him are suddenly right there on the surface. And it's at this point that he finally tells Claude and Philippa about his past. About how he had a brother and sister.
Oh, wow. So he did have family.
Yeah. But there was this big fight, a huge falling out.
Oh, no.
And he ended up leaving home and cutting off all contact with them.
So it's more than just the kids wanting to connect with family. It's like the father's on this parallel journey of trying to reconcile and forgive.
That's such a good point. It makes the story resonate on this whole other level. So anyway, years later, he decides to try and reconnect with his brother.
Good for him.
But he finds out that his brother's dead.
Oh, gosh, that's awful.
And his sister's missing.
Wow, talk about a punch to the gut.
I know. It's heartbreaking. And it explains why he said it was all his fault. You know, he's carrying the weight of those lost years, that missed opportunity to make things right.
Makes you really empathize with him and his loneliness, that's for sure. But wait, this letter, the one that arrived for the father, it wouldn't be from his sister, would it?
Oh, it is. It's from his sister, Aunt Esther.
Get out. Seriously, I knew it. But, like, how? What are the odds?
I know. It seems almost too perfect.
It does.
But Montgomery makes it work because she spent the whole story building up to this moment, right?
Mm-hmm.
She planted those seeds of longing, isolation, the need for connection. And now, through this incredible twist of fate, it's all coming together.
I love it when authors do that, when everything just clicks into place.
Me too. And get this, Aunt Esther had moved far inland and started her own family. She had 2 kids, Dick and Mimi.
Wait a minute. I bet I know what you're going to say.
What?
Those kids, they found the kite.
Yes. You're right. Out of all the places that kite could have landed, it ended up in the hands of their cousins.
Fate, right. Like it was meant to be.
Exactly. Like destiny orchestrated this whole reunion.
Yeah.
So Aunt Esther, she sees this old letter used to patch the kite.
Yeah.
And she recognizes it. It's a letter she wrote years ago. And instantly, she knows. This kite, this letter, it's all connected to her brother, her long-lost brother.
This is blowing my mind.
It's pretty amazing, right? That one simple act of fixing the kite with that old letter.
An act of necessity.
Becomes this bridge that reconnects their family.
Yeah.
Makes you wonder what kites we might be sending out into the world. Right?
Oh, totally. Like what little things we do that could have these huge unseen ripple effects.
Exactly. And so the whole story shifts. It goes from this tale of isolation to this incredible celebration of family and reunion.
I love it.
The father goes to bring Aunt Esther and her kids back to Big Half Moon.
Oh, imagine that moment, seeing each other again after all those years.
I know, right?
Yeah.
Montgomery doesn't go into detail about it, but you can feel the power of that moment.
For sure.
And for Claude and Philippa, it's huge. They finally have playmates, cousins to share adventures with. Their quiet little world is suddenly full of laughter, love, and family.
So sweet. It's like Montgomery saying, look, connecting with others, it's not just about filling some void. It's about making life richer, expanding your world, and reminding you that you're not alone.
100% agree.
It really makes you think about choices, you know?
Yeah, like how what we do can affect other people.
Right, in ways we don't even realize.
Exactly. And it's all wrapped up in this beautiful story about family and second chances and those moments that you don't even realize are so important until way later.
Yeah, like that kite. Who knew a simple kite would end up meaning so much?
It's true. At first, it's just this symbol of the kids wanting something more than their little island.
Right.
But then it literally brings their family back together.
Talk about powerful symbolism. It's not like someone made a grand speech or did something heroic. It's just patching a kite with whatever was handy.
I love that about this story, that it shows how these small, almost accidental things can have huge consequences. It makes you wonder what kites we're all sending out there, right?
Oh, for sure. Like what tiny choices we're making every day that could end up changing things in ways we can't even imagine.
Exactly. And I think that's why this story really sticks with you. It makes you think about your own life, your own family, and all those twists and turns that happen along the way.
Totally agree. It's a reminder that even when things seem lost or connections are broken, there's always hope that things can come back together.
So, as we finish up our deep dive into our runaway kite, we wanted to leave you with something to think about. What's a small event in your life that ended up having a surprisingly big impact?
Yeah, think about those chance meetings, those unexpected connections that maybe changed your direction or led you somewhere you never thought you'd go.
Because sometimes, just like with that runaway kite, the things we lose or the people we miss, they have a way of finding their way back to us.
And that's a pretty amazing thought, isn't it?
It really is. All right, so thanks for joining us for another deep dive into Sea Fever.
Sea Fever, a classic.
Yep, a poem by John Masefield. And, we've got this lesson plan excerpt as our kind of roadmap, so that's cool. Gives us the poem and some background.
Right. Always helpful. Context is key, right?
Totally. Though it makes you wonder, like, what kind of person picks Sea Fever to, teach someone who, I don't know, feels that ocean pull themselves, maybe?
Interesting question. It does make you think about their connection to the sea, yeah.
So the lesson plan tells us Masefield was English, lived 1878 to 1967.
And get this, he was the poet laureate of the United Kingdom.
Whoa, poet laureate. That's a pretty big deal. Like official poet of the realm.
Exactly, a voice of the nation.
Plus he wrote children's novels too, which I think is pretty cool.
Right.
And that makes you think, how does all that background, influence how we read Sea Fever?
Right. Was he writing from personal experience on the sea? Or is it more, like a romanticized longing? And then does him being laureate add, another layer of meaning to what the poem's saying? Lots to unpack there.
Okay, so let's jump into the poem itself. The first stanza really sets the scene, I think. I must go down to the seas again, to the lonely sea in the sky, and all I ask is a tall ship and a star to steer her by. And the wheels kick, and the wind's song, and the white sails shaking, and a gray mist on the sea's face, and a gray dawn breaking. I mean, right away, it just pulls you in.
Oh, for sure. It's so evocative. And that repetition right off the bat, I must go down to the seas again. It's insistent, like the rhythm of the waves, just drawing him back.
Yeah. It's more than just wanting to go sailing. It's like a need.
Exactly. A deep-seated need.
And I love how in this first stanza, he uses really simple but powerful imagery. You've got the tall ship, the star to guide it, even feeling the wheels kick, the wind's song. It's almost like you're right there on deck with him.
Right. And each image is doing so much work. The tall ship, that hints at adventure, exploration, right? Star to steer her by, that gives you a sense of purpose in the journey. Wheels kick grounds you in the physical reality of sailing. And the wind's song, almost mystical, adds this beauty to the experience.
Okay, so second stanza takes us deeper into this longing. I must go down to the seas again, for the call of the running tide is a wild call, and a clear call that may not be denied. And all I ask is a windy day with the white clouds flying and the flint spray and the blown spume and the seagulls crying. I find it interesting how the tide is personified here. It has a call and it's wild and it may not be denied. Almost like the sea is a living thing summoning him back.
Totally. And you notice in this stanza, the focus shifts a bit. Less about the ship, more about just the raw experience of the sea. You've got the wind, the spray, even the seagulls crying.
It's less about sailing, more about being in it,
Yeah. Exactly. It's that immersive feeling. And it reinforces this idea that it's not just a casual thing be nice to go sailing. It's primal, this urge.
Okay, on to the final stanza. This one gets me every time. I must go down to the seas again, to the vagrant gypsy life, to the gull's way and the whale's way, where the wind's like a whetted knife. And all I ask is a merry yarn from a laughing fellow rover, and quiet sleep and a sweet dream when the long trick's over. Tone changes here, right?
Yeah.
Almost romantic, a little adventurous.
Totally. Still that longing, but now it's mixed with like camaraderie, belonging, that vagrant gypsy life, the laughing fellow rover, merry yarn, speaks to freedom, shared stories, connection.
And that final line, the promise of rest, quiet sleep and a sweet dream when the long trick's over. It's like, it's not just about escaping, it's about finding peace too.
Right, finding fulfillment.
There are some words, the phrases here I found really striking, like whetted knife to describe the wind. Creates such a strong image, sharp, intense. And what about long trick? What's that referring to?
So fun fact, Masefield was actually a sailor before he was a poet. And trick, that's an old nautical term for a period of duty on a ship. So long trick is implying a long, hard shift.
Ah, okay, that makes sense.
And the whetted knife, that's just brilliant. It captures both the beauty and the danger of the wind at sea. It can propel you forward, but it can also cut you down.
So yeah, Sea Fever is not just a poem about liking the ocean. It's way deeper, right? It's about this urge for freedom, adventure, almost like the sea represents a spiritual yearning,
Definitely. And I think that's why it still speaks to people today, even if they've never even been on a boat. It taps into something universal. Like we all have those longings for something more. Maybe it's the sea, maybe it's the mountains, maybe it's creative expression. Everyone's got their thing.
Makes you think, right? If you could choose a place that calls to you as strongly as the sea called to Masefield, where would it be and why? That's something to ponder. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive into Sea Fever. Welcome to the Deep Dive. Until next time, where we really get into a topic, really explore it.
Yeah, dive deep.
Dive deep, exactly. So today it's all about cats.
Oh, cool.
And we're using this piece called The Cat by Andrew Barton Patterson.
Now I know that name.
You probably do.
Yeah.
He's pretty famous for that poem, Waltzing Matilda.
Oh, yeah, the one about the swagman, right?
Yeah, exactly. But it turns out he was also pretty fascinated by cats.
Huh, interesting.
Yeah, and in this piece, he kind of like flips the script on how we usually think about cats.
Well, how do we usually think about them? I mean...
I think like the stereotype is that they're lazy, right?
Yeah, they just like sleep all day.
Exactly, maybe chase a little red dot or something.
Right.
But Patterson says, there's a lot more to them than meets the eye.
So what's he saying? What's going on beneath the surface?
He basically calls them like athletes, acrobats, even fierce fighters.
Whoa, hold on, fierce fighters. That's not the cat I know.
Right. It's like they're living the secret life we don't even know about.
So how do they pull this off? Like, how do they fool us so well?
Patterson's theory is that they're like masters of disguise.
Masters of disguise.
Yeah, like they've evolved to kind of put on this act for humans.
It's like they're wearing a mask or something.
Yeah, exactly. Like they're showing us this one side of themselves, but underneath there's this whole other wild side.
I wonder if that's just house cats or like wild cats too.
That's a good question. I'd imagine it's something that helps them no matter where they are.
Yeah, like if you're a wild cat, being sneaky helps you catch food.
Exactly. And if you're a house cat, being all cute and cuddly...
well, it gets you treats.
Exactly. So they figured out how to work the system.
Clever little guys.
Oh, yeah. And Patterson gives this really funny example of this family having tea.
Okay.
And the cat like strolls in all casual, like it doesn't have a care in the world.
Right, looking all innocent.
Exactly. But Patterson says, don't be fooled. This cat's got a plan.
Really? So it's not just about getting a few scraps from the table.
Nope. It's like sizing everyone up, looking for an opportunity.
So it's playing the long game?
Yeah. And often that opportunity comes in the form of a guest.
Ah, the unsuspecting guest.
Yep. They come in all excited to pet the cute kitty.
Maybe slip it a little something from their plate.
Right. And then bam, Patterson describes this scene where the cat just straight up scratches the guest.
Oh, no.
I know it sounds bad, but...
well, we see that as like aggression, right?
But for cats, it's not necessarily that.
Oh, so it's like something else?
Yeah, I mean, it can be a way of marking their territory or like showing who's boss.
So it's like a power move.
Exactly. And the funny thing is the family's just like, oh, that's just Mittens being Mittens.
They have no idea what's really going on.
Right. They just think it's cute, but the cat's sending a message.
You're like, this is my house, back off.
Exactly. It's all about communication, but in a way we don't always understand.
That's kind of creepy when you think about it.
It is a little bit. Makes you wonder what our cats are really thinking.
Seriously, like, what's going on in those little heads of theirs?
Well, Patterson really dives into that when he describes what happens at night.
Night times. Oh, yeah. That's when things get interesting.
He uses this imagery of like the cat leaping onto fences, disappearing into the shadows, almost like a panther.
Look at totally different creature.
Exactly.
Yeah.
He even says, no longer are they the meek creatures who an hour ago were mewing for fish and milk. They are now grim fighters.
Grim fighters. That's intense.
Right. And suddenly your backyard, it's not just a backyard anymore.
It's a battleground.
Yeah, it's a whole world of adventure and danger that we're totally oblivious to.
So we're just sleeping in our beds while our cats are out there living these crazy lives.
Pretty much. It really makes you think about how much we don't see.
And how different their experience of the world must be.
Exactly. And Patterson's point is that even the most pampered house cat still has that wild instinct inside them.
That connection to their ancestors.
Yeah. And that leads to another interesting point he makes about how cats view their territory.
Their territory, oh, like their home.
Yeah, but it's more than just that. He says their attachment to their environment might actually be stronger than their bond with their human family.
Really? That's kind of a blow to the ego.
I know, right? We like to think our cats love us.
That we're their people.
Exactly. But Patterson's saying their loyalty might be more to the place itself.
Like their favorite spots, their smells, the other cats they know.
Exactly. It's like their sense of home is tied to all those things.
Huh. So it's not really about us at all.
Well, it makes you think, doesn't it?
It does. He even tells this story that's kind of hard to hear.
Yeah. About how some cats, when their families move,
they stay behind.
Yeah, like they choose the house over the people.
Oh, wow. That's heartbreaking.
It is, right? Like, we think we're doing what's best for them, taking them to a new place.
But they're like, wait, I had a good thing going here.
Exactly. It's like their whole world is tied to that one spot.
So their idea of home is totally different from ours.
Yeah. It's more about security and familiarity and all those things we don't even think about.
Wow. That's really eye-opening.
It is. It makes you realize there's so much more to cats than we realize.
And maybe we've been going about this whole cat ownership thing all wrong.
Maybe so. But luckily, we've got Patterson to guide us.
Yeah, let's see what else he has to say about these mysterious creatures. Makes you wonder what love even means to a cat, right?
Yeah, like for us, it's all about being close and loyal.
Wanting to be with that person all the time.
Right. But maybe for cats, it's more about having their own space, feeling safe in their environment.
That's a good point. You know, we talk a lot about perspective on this show.
Yeah, seeing things from different angles.
And it's easy to forget that our pets don't see the world the same way we do.
Right, like we project our own feelings onto them.
But their reality could be totally different.
So how do we bridge that gap? How do we connect with our cats on their level?
I think Patterson has some ideas. He says we need to appreciate cats for who they are, not who we want them to be.
So stop trying to make them into mini-humans.
Exactly. Like, let them be cats with all their quirks.
So if my cat would rather chase bugs than cuddle on the couch, that's fine.
More than fine. It's natural. We should encourage those instincts.
So give them things to climb on, places to hide toys to play with.
Exactly.
Make their environment stimulating.
Even let them outside if it's safe.
Yeah, let them explore their wild side a little.
So we're not just spoiling them, we're actually helping them be happier.
Exactly. We're meeting their needs as cats.
But how do we figure out what those needs are? Like, how do we understand them better?
Well, we can start by paying attention to their body language.
Oh, yeah, like the slow blink.
That's a big one. It means they trust you.
And when they rub their cheeks on you.
They're scent marking you, claiming you as part of their territory.
So even the little things have meaning.
Everything they do has a purpose.
It's like they're speaking a secret language.
And the more we learn about it, the better we can communicate with them.
It's kind of mind-blowing, right? Like, we live with these creatures, but we barely know them.
That's what makes Patterson's work so cool. He shows us how much there is to discover.
It's like he's peeling back the layers of the onion.
Revealing the true cat underneath.
And maybe in the process, we learn something about ourselves, too. Oh, absolutely. Like, what does it mean to connect with another being?
To share your life with someone so different from you.
That's a deep question.
It is. But I think it's something we can all relate to.
Yeah. Whether you have a cat or a dog or a goldfish.
We're all trying to find our place in the world.
To make connections, to understand each other.
Exactly. So what are some things our listeners can take away from this, even if they don't have cats?
Well, for one, I think Patterson reminds us not to underestimate animals.
They're smarter than we give them credit for.
They have their own ways of seeing the world.
And we can learn a lot from them.
If we just take the time to listen.
And observe.
And open our minds to different perspectives.
Because the world is full of amazing creatures.
Each one with its own story to tell.
And who knows, maybe by understanding them better, we can understand ourselves a little better, too. It's like, hey, we need to be more present, more aware.
Yeah, like really tune in to the little details.
So for all the cat people out there, what's the biggest takeaway from all this? What should they remember?
I think it's about letting cats be cats, you know?
Like embracing their true nature.
Exactly. Not trying to fit them into our human ideas of what a pet should be.
So how do we do that? How do we let our cats be themselves?
Well, think about their environment. Give them places to climb, things to scratch, you know?
Let them be active.
Yeah, and give them places to hide, too. Cats need their alone time.
Oh, yeah, they definitely do. And toys.
Absolutely. The more stimulating their environment, the happier they'll be.
So no more forcing them into little sweaters.
I mean, maybe some cats like that.
True. Some cats are divas.
But the point is to pay attention to what your cat enjoys.
Respect their boundaries.
Exactly. Because their idea of fun might be different from ours.
Like they might be perfectly content just watching a bird out the window.
Or napping in a sunbeam.
Exactly. It's about appreciating those little things.
And celebrating their independence.
Even their aloofness.
Because that's all part of what makes them cats.
And that's what makes them so special.
Exactly. So the next time you see your cat just chilling out,
look all mysterious.
remember there's a whole world going on inside their heads.
A world we can only imagine.
Full of instincts and senses, and maybe even a little bit of wildness.
It's pretty amazing when you think about it.
It is. And if we're lucky, maybe they'll share a little piece of that world with us.
Well, that's about it for our deep dive into the secret lives of cats.
Big thanks to Andrew Barton Patterson for giving us a peek behind the curtain.
We hope you learned something new about these fascinating creatures.
And maybe even about yourselves.
Until next time, keep exploring, keep questioning,
and keep diving deep.
We'll see you on the next Hey everyone, welcome back. Ready for another deep dive? Today we're getting up close and personal with, well, a snail.
A snail.
Yep, you heard that right, a snail. But before you click away thinking this is going to be all slime and slowness, we're going to be looking at snails through the eyes of William Cowper and his poem, The Snail. It's like a tiny window into a whole other world. Think about it, carrying your house everywhere you go.
That's a pretty unique lifestyle, right? No mortgage payments, no property taxes.
Exactly. Plus, built-in protection from the elements, instant privacy whenever you need it.
Well, except for maybe nosy birds or curious kids. But yeah, Cowper's poem gives us a glimpse into that snail life. And what's really cool is that Cowper was a big deal in the poetry world back in the 18th century. But unlike a lot of poets of his time, he wasn't writing about grand adventures or mythical heroes.
He was more of a down-to-earth kind of guy.
Exactly. He focused on the everyday, the simple beauty of nature, the things people often overlook. He was part of a movement that made poetry more accessible, more relatable.
So set the scene for us. Who was William Cowper? What kind of world was he living in?
Picture England in the 1700s. Powdered wigs, formal gardens, a growing interest in the natural world. And there's Cowper, right in the thick of it. He was a super popular poet, known for his focus on ordinary things. A walk in the countryside, a cup of tea, or in this case, the quiet life of a snail. He saw beauty in the mundane, the everyday.
And that's what makes his poetry so timeless. It's something we can all connect with. But before we dive into the poem itself, anything about snails that might surprise our listeners? Any fun facts to pique their curiosity?
You know, some snails can actually hibernate for up to 3 years. They seal themselves up in their shells and wait out tough conditions. Talk about resilience. They're like little survival experts.
Wow, that's incredible. Okay, enough suspense. Let's hear the poem. Bring Cowper's words to life for us.
To grass or leaf or fruit or wall, the snail sticks close, nor fears to fall. As if he grew there, house and all, together. Within that house secure he hides, when danger imminent betides, of storm or other harm besides, of weather. Give but his horns the slightest touch. His self-collecting power is such, he shrinks into his house with much displeasure. Where'er he dwells alone. Except himself has chattels none, well satisfied to be his own. Whole treasure.
Wow. I don't know what I was expecting, but that was really beautiful. There's this real sense of peace and contentment in those lines, wouldn't you say? Like right from the start, sticks close, nor fears to fall. It's almost like Cowper's highlighting the snail's total trust in its connection to the world. No fear, no anxiety, just pure acceptance.
Absolutely. That feeling of security, of being so anchored to your surroundings, it's a powerful image. And, you know, it almost works as a metaphor for finding that inner peace we all crave.
I see that. And then there's that striking image of the snail carrying its house and all wherever it goes. Yeah. Such a strong visual representation of self-sufficiency.
Right. The ultimate minimalist. Carrying everything it needs. No need for all the stuff we humans seem to think we need. Speaking of minimalism, Cowper's use of chattels none, to describe the snail's lack of possessions. That's such a powerful choice of words. It's like he's deliberately contrasting the snail's simplicity with the excesses of human life.
Okay, before we go any further, for those of us who aren't walking 18th century dictionaries, break down that word chattels for us. What does it really mean?
Basically, chattels are possessions, belongings, all that stuff we tend to accumulate. By saying the snail has chattels none, Cowper's not just making a biological observation, he's highlighting the snail's freedom from all those material burdens.
It's like he's subtly asking, do we really need all this stuff to be happy? And in today's world of consumerism and constant advertising, that's a pretty radical question.
It is, isn't it? And it gets you thinking, what would it look like to live more like a snail, to be content with less? And there's another phrase in the poem that really jumps out at me, that self-collecting power when the snail retreats into its shell. It's not just hiding, it's a deliberate act of self-preservation.
It's choosing when to engage with the world and when to withdraw.
Exactly. And in a world where we're constantly bombarded with information and stimulation, that ability to pull back, to create space for ourselves, that feels incredibly relevant, don't you think? Like, maybe we could all benefit from a little bit of that snail-like self-collecting power.
Couldn't agree more. It's definitely food for thought. And speaking of food, I'm curious, how were snails viewed back in Cowper's time? Mm-hmm. Were they seen as garden pests, or was there any appreciation for them? Because in the poem, Cowper seems to portray them pretty positively.
I imagine it was a mixed bag, much like today. Gardeners probably weren't big fans, but Cowper's poem definitely elevates the snail, doesn't it? He doesn't focus on the slime trails or the nibbled leaves.
Right, he's not looking at them as a nuisance. He sees something deeper.
Exactly. There's a sense of nobility in their solitude, in their self-contained way of life. And the structure of the poem, the simple rhyme scheme, it all contributes to this feeling of gentle observation, a quiet appreciation for the snail's way of being.
So we've got this image of the snail as a symbol of self-sufficiency, contentment, resilience even. But if we zoom out a bit, what does this all mean for us? What can we, the listeners, take away from Cowper's exploration of the snail's world?
I think Cowper's inviting us to slow down, to pay attention to those little things we often miss, and maybe, just maybe, to find some inspiration in the snail's quiet, unassuming approach to life. In a world that's constantly pushing us to do more, be more, have more, the snail reminds us that sometimes less is truly more.
What a powerful thought. And remember, folks, we've only just scratched the surface here. There's always more to discover, so keep exploring. Maybe even take a walk in nature. See if you can spot a snail. You might be surprised by what you find.
Who knows? You might even learn a thing or two about yourself.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. We'll catch you next time.
Happy exploring!